Hey, it's Sunday evening. It's time for our Ecclesiastes study, chapter 6 in your Old Testament. As we're moving through here, Solomon is, I think, using a literary technique. He's showing us all the different experiments that people try. People who are just thinking under the sun. They forget about there's something above the sun, that there is a S-O-N, sun. Uh, and just thoughts apart from God, trying to find satisfaction here, trying to find satisfaction here, trying to find. Well, we get to chapter 6, and it's like somebody's getting on in life, an old man, and his depression's just getting worse and worse because he's thinking, well, this is all there is, this life, and it's just vanity. It's just useless and empty, and now I've lived it, and somebody else is going to get my stuff. It's just very depressing. But as I said, I think that's a literary technique he's using to bring us all through this and come to the conclusion of the whole matter in chapter 12, the final chapter. Chapter 6, 12 verses, we'll be halfway through it. There is an evil which I've seen under the sun, and it's common among men. A man to whom God's given riches, wealth, and honor, oh, he's got it all, so that he wants nothing for his soul of all that he desires. Yet, I think he gets sick. Maybe he gets cancer or something unexpectedly. Yet God gives him not power to eat thereof, but a stranger eats it. This is vanity and an evil disease, or an evil calamity. Not fair. And you look at life like that, and you have to say, if this life is all there is, then yeah, there's a lot of stuff that ain't fair. You don't try to do the best you can, and you may get cancer. You may go to a premature grave, and you have to say, well, life sure ain't fair. And if it's all there is of life is under the sun, then that's a depressing thought, isn't it? And that's where we're going here in our depressing chapter this evening. He says, verse 3, if a man begets 100 children and lives many years, so that the days of his years be many, he grows old, he's got all kinds of kids and grandkids, and his soul be not filled with good, and also that he have no burial, I say that an untimely birth is better than he had been better off to be stillborn than to have to be born and come through this world. For he comes with vanity or uselessness or emptiness or futility or grasping at the wind. And he departs in darkness, just into a dark grave, a dark hole in the ground somewhere. And his name will be covered with darkness. Moreover, he's not seen the sun nor known anything. This hath more rest than the other. Yea, though he live 1,000 years twice, if he lived to be 2,000 years old, 1,000 years twice told, yet he's seen no good. And in the end, he says, we all go to the same place. and if you're only looking under the sun, you can't see past the grave. And he says, it don't matter how long you live or what you've done down here. Says we end all up dead in the grave somewhere. We all go to one place. And he says this in verse 7. I've felt this way sometimes before of you, that all the labor of man's for his mouth. You feel like you just go work all week sometimes in some of these old jobs just so you can put food on the table. All the labor of man's for his mouth, and yet the appetite's not filled. It ain't enough. You're never content. For what hath the wise more than the fool? What hath the poor that knoweth to walk before the living? Better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the desire. Now, there's a translation in the middle of my King James here that kind of translates this in a different phrase directly from the Hebrew. And let me read that to you right here. What the eyes see is better than what the soul goes after. And that's how a lot of people think, that they don't have any thoughts of God. They think this world is all there. So it's like a bird in the hand's better than two in the bush. I've got this world, but it takes faith to believe there's another world. So it says, it's what Solomon's saying in his thought under the sun here. It says, better is what you can see than what your faith goes after. These people feel that way. I don't, see. But this is a depressed old man in the writing right here now. Verse 10, he says, we'll see what his further complaint. We only got 12 verses for him to complain tonight. Verse 10 says, that which has been is named already, and it is known that it is man, neither may he contend with him that is mightier than he. Well, I don't know. There's some truth to these statements, even though it's a complaint, ain't it? That you can't, no need to contend with somebody that's stronger than you. And I would go with this as a Christian preacher and say, you know what? There's some truth there. So that if God's dealing with you, you might as well quit fighting him because you ain't going to win. He's mightier than you. Verse 11. Seeing there be many things that increase vanity, what is man the better? For who knoweth what is good for a man in this life? Who knows what's good for the... I've heard people say that before. Who knows what's right and what's wrong? Who knows what's good? All the days of his vain life, which he spends, are as a shadow. Or as James says, this life's but a vapor that appears for a little while and then it fades away. And Solomon would say here in this section of his books, and we all go to the same place, and it's a dark old hole in the ground. For who can tell a man what shall be after him? Who can tell the man what will be after him under the sun? Well, just under the sun, I can't tell you, but I've got a book that's a message from outer space, and I can tell you that there is something better than this life, and there is something beyond the grave. And this life is a shadow. It's just a blip on the radar screen of eternity. But there is eternity beyond that. And to answer that question, who can tell what will be after us? I can. Not because I'm smarter than anybody else, but because I've got the book that tells us that there is an eternity. There is something to look forward to beyond the grave. And this life is that time that you make that decision where you want to spend eternity. Trust Christ. See you next time.